We'll call heads.
Okay, so heads has been called. I'm just going to use a coin flip app on my phone. And the flip is tails. I'll have another judge take a look, show you that it's tails. So that means choice goes over here first.
We will take Con, please.
We'll take second speaker.
So Con for George and Hegge. First speaker. Crow for Hassen and Stolz, second speaker. Judges that feel super excited about watching time. I will watch time of speeches. If you at any point need a signal of some sort, if something messes up, let me know. Otherwise, I'm not going to worry about them. I will watch prep, and we'll give in 30-second increments as you use it.
All right.
You bet.
Are all my judges ready? All right. We negate resolved. In the United States, right to work laws do more harm than good for the following two contentions. First, right to work protects lives. And second, economic outcomes are better in right to work states. We offer the framework of cost-benefit analysis. Contention 1, right to work protects lives. Combs in 19 explains, quote, right to work states were home to 38 strikes in 2018. But in the same year, unions in the non-right to work states called 131 strikes, more than 3 times as many. 4 non-right to work states alone more than double the output of the right to work club when it comes to labor unrest, unquote. ILR Labor Action Tracker points out that in the last 2 years, 11.6% nurse strikes occurred in right to work, while 88.4% occurred in non-right to work states. Right to work states see less labor unrest because, as Hathaway in 17 points, quote, right to work laws are proven to boost workers' well-being, both emotional and economic, unquote. Impact, strikes threatens lives. Berger in 22 explains, quote, patient outcomes declined significantly during a nursing strike. Organizations have reported losses of over $46 million to train and replace the nurses for large strikes. Smaller community hospitals had to close their doors to serving their communities, never recovering from the cost of the nursing strike, unquote. Wright in 2010 points to the deadly implication, quote, in-hospital mortality increased by 19.4% and hospital readmissions increased by 6.5% for patients admitted during a strike. An estimated 138 more individuals died than would have without a strike, and 344 more patients were readmitted to the hospital than if there had been no strike, unquote. Contention 2, economic outcomes are better in right-to-work states. Shirk in 11 explains, quote, the additional business investment a right-to-work law attracts usually raises the demand for labor, increasing wages, unquote. ISNAT 18 quantifies the economic effect, quote, long-run beneficial effects of right-to-work laws on economic activity may ultimately lead to higher wages. 2003 study by Reed estimated, with wages 6.7% higher in right-to-work states than in non-right-to-work states in 2000, holding other factors constant, unquote. Vedder in 10 explains, right-to-work increases income by $11,000 annually for a family of 4. ISNAT 18 explains, quote, empirical research strongly suggests that right-to-work laws improve state-level economic performance, unquote. Shannon 14 furthers, quote, states with right-to-work law attracts more new businesses than states without such laws, and also typically have a better business climate than non-right-to-work states, unquote. ISNAC 18 elaborates, quote, Indiana and Michigan, which passed right-to-work laws in 2012, have experienced accelerated economic growth since the laws were passed, unquote. Impact, economic growth. First, Delhi 23 reports, quote, from 2011 through 2020, right-to-work states had almost 8% higher employment growth, almost 10% higher growth in manufacturing payroll employment, and higher disposable income once cost of living is factored in, unquote. Second, right-to-work boosts innovation. Nguyen in 22 explains, quote, the enactment of state right to work laws strongly encourage firms to generate innovation outputs with higher quantity and quality, and as a result, gain stronger competitiveness over product market rivals, unquote. Nguyen explains how this is achieved, quote, state right to work laws significantly encourage corporate innovation in terms of patent grant and citation count, unquote. She quantifies, quote, empirical evidence suggests that following the right to work adoption, treated firms on average sees 3.8% sales growth rate from industry rivals located in the non-right to work states, unquote. This is significant because Tarun in 07 explains that, quote, approximately 50% of US annual GDP growth is attributed to increases in innovation, unquote. Thus, we negate.
Good job.
Everyone ready? Alright, and with that, I will begin. We affirm the resolution resolved. In the United States, right to work laws do more harm than good. Contention 1, protecting workers from income inequality. Subpoint A, income inequality in America. Christian Weller in 2021, quote, the median white family has about 10 times the wealth of the median black family and more than 8 times the wealth of the median Hispanic family. Wealth is also much more unequally distributed than income, with the top 5% of families holding about 250 times as much wealth as the median family, unquote. Income inequality is when the wealthy are gaining more money than the middle class or minorities, which harms the working class and creates class barriers that divide American society. Subpoint B, unions are key to reducing income inequality, especially for black and Hispanic members. Christian Weller in 2021, quote, while median household wealth for white union members rises to 1.8 times the wealth of their non-union counterparts, it is 3.5 times higher for black families, 3.4 times larger for other or multi-race families, and 5.2 times larger for non-white Hispanic families, unquote. That means that union Hispanic families have over 500% more wealth than non-union Hispanic families. Collective bargaining of unions is key to reducing income inequality. Subpoint C, right to work decreases union membership. We see page in 2022, quote, right to work states have especially low unionization rates and wages in highly unionized industries. We find a difference of nearly 20% in the unionization rate between states with and without right to work laws, unquote. Subpoint D, working class is harmed by corporations. Gordon Lapper in 2022, quote, when workers can't exercise collective bargaining, inequality grows and wages stagnate, as shown in the long-term decline of workers' wages over the past 40 years. CEO compensation has grown 940% since 1978, while the typical worker compensation has risen only 12%. When workers have the ability to collectively bargain with their employers, the division of corporate profits is much more equally shared. On average, if one compares a union employee with a non-union employee of the same gender, race, ethnicity, education, years of experience working in the same occupation, same industry, same geographic area, the unionized workers' wages are 13% higher than the non-union counterpart, unquote. Unions are key to bringing money back to the workers, thus resulting in higher wages. Impact, decrease in unionization due to right to work laws leads to billions of dollars to the rich. Heidi Sherholtz in 2020, quote, research shows that this deunionization accounts for a sizable share of the growth in inequality over that period, around 13 to 20% for women and 33 to 37% for men. Applying these shares to annual earnings data reveals that the working people are now losing on the order of $200 billion per year as a result of the erosion of union coverage over the last 4 decades, with that money being redistributed upwards to the rich, unquote. Strong unions are the greatest way to reduce income inequality by bargaining for better wages for all people. Contention 2, protecting workers' health. Subpoint A, massive difference in healthcare coverage between right to work and non-right to work. Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2019, quote, 95% of civilian union workers and 68% of non-union workers had access to employer-provided healthcare benefits in March of 2019, unquote. Unionized workplaces have 27% more chance to have healthcare benefits available to workers. Impact, right to work laws would make 2 million workers lose healthcare. David Madlin in 2012, quote, if benefits in non-right to work states were lowered to the levels of states with these laws, 2 million fewer workers would receive health insurance and 3.8 million fewer workers would receive pensions nationwide, unquote. Subpoint B, unions lowered COVID-19 mortality rates. Health Affairs in 2022, quote, a new study released ahead of print by Health Affairs used proprietary unionized nursing home data to examine the association between union status and home resident COVID-19 deaths, and found that unions were associated with a 10.8% lower resident COVID-19 mortality rate and a 6.8% lower worker COVID-19 infection rates, unquote. Impact, 8,000 lives could have been saved. George Washington University in April of 2022, quote, the research team estimates that if all U.S. nursing homes were unionized, as many as 8,000 resident deaths and 25,000 employee infections could have been prevented during the 10-month study, unquote. And for these reasons, we'll be voting for pro.
Alright, everyone ready for cross? Okay. So how much has income inequality been stopped as a result of unions?
So we can clearly say that unions are the key to stopping income inequality. Now, we're not saying unions are the only key, but we don't need a specific number here. All we need to show is that unions are increasing wages, which we have, and they're increasing wealth. And that is what helps keep this income inequality from rising.
Alright, can I have follow-up on that?
Yes, you may.
How much is wages increasing by as a result of unions?
Again, we can see that's going to be a 13.2% in subpoint D, and to further quantify that, it's going to be about $1,500.
$1,500,
Yes.
perfect. Okay.
All right, perfect. So you talk about in your second contention about economic outcomes, right to work increases employment by 8%. Do you have a number for that specifically?
8%. So that is specifically the Delhi card that looks at 2011 through 2022. That's looking all across America, and it's at 8%. It doesn't tell us how many number it actually is, but there's an 8% increase as a direct result of right to work
Okay,
laws.
thank you.
Let's talk about protection of workers, right?
Sure.
So how much healthcare benefits is lost in a right to work setting after the state puts on the legislation?
I'm confused what you mean by that.
So after right to work laws are introduced, how much does healthcare go down by, or healthcare benefits?
So they're comparing the benefits of non-right to work to right to work, and it says that 2 million fewer workers would receive health insurance, and 3.8 million fewer workers would receive pensions nationwide if non-right to work states lowered their levels to right to work states in
Okay.
terms of union benefits that they bargained for. All right. So in your second contention again of economic incomes, you talk about how innovation is increased by right to work laws.
Yep.
Could you explain how right to work laws specifically increase innovation?
Yeah, so that's where the Nguyen 22 cards comes into place. So Nguyen specifically tells us that corporate innovation is what's happening. So we see that there's patent grant and citation counts, and that's what quantifies it. We see that there's a 3.8% increase because these companies are more open to innovation after right to work laws have been put into place.
Okay, but can you clarify please, because right to work laws just allow workers to have the choice to leave or join a union. So how is that law specifically what's resulting in all this innovation?
Yeah, because it creates a more competitive market, which creates rivalry between these non-right to work states and right to work states. And right to work states actually sees the sales growth that has been seen in the non-right to
And
work
could you
states.
follow up with regard to that? Could you explain this competitive market? How is this market competitive?
Yeah, so we see that right to work when it's passed, it creates a more competitive market because it has better economic policies that come along with it. And when we see that, we always see increase in corporate innovation.
So,
Can I have a question now?
Yeah, of course.
All right, let's talk about union membership going down. That 20% is just comparing right to work versus non-right to work, right? Where does it directly attributed to right to work
So
laws?
it specifically says right to work states have especially low unionization rates in highly unionized industries. So the 20% is going to be a decrease in comparison to this right to work or non-right to work states to right to work states. So they're seeing this one is decreased by over 20% compared to the other one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can I have follow-up on
Yes.
that? What are the direct impacts of that?
So that's going to be, you're going to be C subpoint D, these working class hard by corporations, because unions are far less strong in these right to work states because their unionization rate is so low, because they're not getting the funds that they need. So they're not able to benefit workers as much because they're far less powerful. Does that make sense?
All right, yeah.
Yeah. Sure. All right, so you talk about this growth of 50%, this 50% GDP growth. Where is that money going to? Do you mind explaining that to me?
So that's just the United States GDP as a whole. Any increases in innovation leads to that 50% increase.
Okay, well, what about the 3.8% sales growth then? Is that money
So-
going to the workers?
So that is,
Okay.
would you like me to answer that? Okay.
And I'll start prep time now.
Alright, let's go. There's 30 seconds used.
Okay. Also,
1 minute. Okay, call it a minute used.
I'll just be going down the pro side of the flow as soon as I get up there. With that being said, is everybody ready?
realize that Khan always shows you that right to work is creating more benefits. We not only show this to you with our right in 10, which explains that 138 individuals died because of a singular strike. And at the point where we show you that right to work states see 3 times less strikes than their non-right to work counterparts, and as well as when we show you that that direct link is because these nurses are better satisfied due to wages and healthcare satisfaction. Not only that, but when we show you that there is 6.7% higher wages or $11,000 being given back to the average family, we always outweigh on the economic might. Along with the 3.8% increase innovation, we always show you right to work creates benefits. But let's go into their first contention of income inequality. First of all, realize a couple key things. COVID-19 found, quote, right to work legislation and distribution of market income finds no evidence to suggest legislation has been a major cause of growing inequality record in the second half of the 20th century, unquote. This is due to the fact that these companies are exploiting laws and economic laws that the United States federal government has just allowed to occur. They're taking advantage of economic loopholes. There's nothing that right to work states can do to directly harm or benefit this at all. But more specifically, let's go into their subpoint B of minorities. First of all, realize that if these unions were so effective in curbing this, we would see it in the empirical data to the point where they can't tell you the numbers showing the inequality levels between right to work and non-right to work states. It shows you that one, these unions aren't as effective as they're leading you to believe. But second of all, take a look at Lucy and 15, where they specifically tell us, quote, right to work states are doing a better job of providing opportunities for minorities seeking work. Black unemployment in right to work states are a full percentage below full force United States, and Latino are 2% lower, unquote. At that point, when we couple this with our 6.7% increase in wages or $11,000, these minorities not only see that they have better access to jobs, but also better access to increase in wages. We always outweigh. But going on to their subpoint C, realize that their page 22 evidence looks at 5 states, and it's comparing those 5 states, meaning that they can't attribute that differentiation within the unionization to right to work. They can't tell you that at all. This is correlation and not causation. But moreover, when we see that they never show you a decrease in effectiveness of these unions, that's where we're gaining unique offense. Look to Block and 18, where they describe that union members within right to work states are actually more satisfied, with 77% saying that their union within the right to work state satisfied their conditions compared to 71% of their forced unionized counterparts. This not only shows you a couple things. First of all, that unions can work within these right to work states, but second of all, that we see that they're actually more effective in satisfying the overall worker. But now let's go into their subpoint D of harms corporations. Look to Flick in 18, where they explain that, quote, these companies also provide higher wages, more training, broader benefits, and employees to spend more money on to limit pollution, unquote. At that point, when Mix in 19 also shows us that $4,500 is being put back into the Americans' pockets, specifically looking at 2017, it shows us that this wage increase isn't just a short-term solution, but a long-term benefits from these right-to-work laws. But now, let's take a look more specifically at their impact. First of all, when they can't tell you how much we're seeing this income inequality decrease, it's a non-right to work state, it's correlation. It can't actually tell you this $200 billion because that's nationwide. That's looking all across the board. But now let's specifically go into their second contention. First of all, realize with their subpoint A of coverage, Brandon and 17 actually observed that right to work states had 7% more healthcare coverage. And when these companies have to compete with each other to gain employment labors, which is what Shirk 11 tells us, they're going to have to compete with things like wages or better healthcare. But moreover, when we show you 138 deaths from these nurses' strikes that right to work states stop, that's where we're gaining unique offense again. Onto their impact of loss of pensions. First of all, this is a prediction for both the pension number and the insurance number. But second, we can see that pensions are simply being phased out because of 401ks. But now let's go on to their subpoint C, B of COVID. Realize, first of all, it's due to the state policies of COVID. Look to Condon in 21, where they looked at New York, which is a non-right to work state, how they allowed the readmittance of 9,000 patients that were going back into the nursing home that had COVID-19. That's the reason why we saw more deaths. The union did nothing to stop that. And at the end of the day, it's always a con ballot.
I'll just be using prep time, please.
Okay, it's going.
Thank you.
Thirty seconds used. 1 minute used.
That'll be enough for me.
Okay. Oh, just under 130 used.
Okay, thank you. Okay. With that, are my judges ready? Okay, opponents ready? With that, I will begin. Okay, let's go on to the first point of right to work text laws. To this, I have two responses. One, they don't actually give you an actual reason of why it's happening. Specifically, there are 38 strikes in right to work comparing to 138 strikes is happening because of CEO corruption. Strikes are a result of CEO corruption and them retaliating against that. So that's actually a net harm of the con world in this specific card. But not just that, my second response to this is that right to work, specifically within nurses and public sector jobs, already have right to work. From the U.S. Supreme Court in 2018, the Janus versus American Federation Union, states and public sector unions may no longer extract agency fees from non-consenting employees. So these public sector unions that they specifically talk about within their nurses card already have right to work. So if they have that, why isn't it solved? Why is it still happening? Why are these strikes still happening if right to work is the solvency to that? This they can't answer because these nurses are public sector and are still happening within right to work. Neither my side nor their side can solve for this. So you will not be weighing this in this round. Their whole contention falls because it's all reliant on these nurse strikes and their nurses' contentions. So for these reasons, you will not be voting on that contention. Now that their whole first contention is dropped, let's go on to their second contention, where they specifically talk about economic outcome. And they give you this 6.7% wage increase, this $11,000 increase. Now, you can choose to believe that, or you can ask for the warrant to it. Why is this happening? We give you two specific evidence within our card, where we show you that unions are advocating for specific increases within wages. We give you that increases between $1,500 for these union workers, while they give you no specific warrants onto why union wages, wages between and non-right to work states are actually increasing. So you will not be buying this in this specific round. But not just that, you can cross-apply our own specific case when we show you that the working class is harmed by corporations, where we specifically show you that it's only increased by 12% compared to 940% for corporations and CEOs. You will be buying this in this round, not just that, but because of our Bruno 2021 card, where it specifically takes into account in an 8-year period from national economic expansion that followed the Great Recession of 2008, the 27 U.S. states that had enacted so-called right-to-work laws saw slower economic growth, lower wages, higher consumed debts, worse health outcomes, and lower levels of civic participation in states that had not. The comprehensive study utilized 8 years data from the American Community Survey, U.S. Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Commerce, Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So for these reasons, you will be buying this specific card because we use comprehensive studies that specifically give you a warrant onto why wages are increasing. Specifically, $1,500. You will be weighing that in this round until my opponents can come up here and give you an actual warrant or a why onto their 11,000s. You will not be buying that card in this specific round. Now let's go on to my opponent's innovation and country innovation specific card. One, realize that this is not specific for right to work or non-right to work states. It just gives a generalization for innovation within the whole United States. We are not debating that in this round today, so you will not be weighing that in this specific round. But not just that, look to the specific innovation card where they give you no warrant onto how right to work itself as a law actually increases innovation. They just tell you that it is. It's not doing that specifically, and unless my opponents again can give you a warrant to this, you will not be weighing this in the round. But not just that, because realize that it's also not unique to specific right to work states. Innovation happens regardless. Look to California, look to New York. Innovation is still happening in states that don't have right to work, so you will not be winning this in this specific round. Now let's go on to my case and responding to some response to my opponent's side. They give you this response of right to work is not the harm of union reducing income inequality and stuff like that. Now realize that they're trying to say that right to work itself does not cause income inequality. Now our argument never specifically actually said that. What we're specifically saying in that argument is that unions actually prevent against income inequality and help against it. And what we're specifically showing is that right to work decreases union power, meaning that there's less power to help against income inequality. So for these reasons, you will be voting onto the ProSat today. Thank you for your time.
Do you want to stand at the podium or just at a desk?
I'll wait on my desk.
Okay, perfect, sounds good.
If you don't mind, let me get my stuff.
You good to go?
Yes.
Okay. So specifically looking into how the Janus ruling, right, with the public sectors, what part of yours says that nurses, the 100% of nurses, are public sector employees?
The majority of nurses are public sector. They are. Most of them are. That's just.
Again, I'm asking for your card because as far as I'm aware,
Do you?
when,
Okay. Do you have a card that says they're not public sector?
yeah, you can specifically look to Sanford and Abiah, who definitely aren't
Okay,
public
you-
sector.
Okay. You give me 2 examples in our South Dakota states. That's not looking at it on a nationwide scale.
Yeah,
You have a
so-
specific card that supports you saying that
So-
they're not public sector.
First of all, it's your argument that you brought up, meaning that it's your burden of proof.
Okay.
Second of all, when we show you that these non-right to work states have more strikes because the union is forcing these nurses to strike, even if they have an increase in pay already, like in the most recent New York City example with the nurses, already having a 19.1% guaranteed increase in wages, you're still seeing the perpetuation. of
Okay, so that's all under the assumption that these are not public nurses. Can you give me a specific quantitative number then that says they are not public sector?
Yep, so
To support
specifically,
your argument then?
yep, so specifically, our case doesn't look into the public versus private sector nurses.
So then how do we know that they're not public sector?
Again, it's your burden of proof because you're the one who's bringing up that argument.
Okay,
But second of
we'll do
all,
that in summary then.
Okay,
You can have the next question.
so specifically, it's actually your question.
Okay, onto your specific economic growth and the 6.7% wages increase. Do you have a specific warrant to that? And
Yep. So Shirkin 11 explains that these companies, because they have to attract more labor for when they move to these right-to-work states, they have to offer things like better wages, better healthcare coverage, increasing pensions. They have to attract the labor force somehow, and that automatically, at the end of the day, for the majority of Americans, is wages and healthcare benefits.
okay, can I have a follow-up question to
Yeah,
that?
of course.
Why do these companies have to do that? What law specifically is forcing them to increase these actual wages for these workers?
It's not necessarily a law. It's just, why would I work for a company that pays me $2 less when I could go work somewhere else that would pay me $4 more? Same thing with healthcare. It's more specifically geared to the individual worker.
So then it's just an analysis, not an actual comprehensive saying that there's actual laws or corporations that are actually increasing their wages for this. You're just analyzing that.
Shirkin 11 explains that when we see companies having to compete for labor, it results in increasing wages.
Okay.
That's directly from Shirk.
Yeah, you can have the next question.
Yeah, okay, so let's specifically look at this idea of innovation, right? So, actually, do you have the date for the slower economic growth and how it's bad for the healthcare industry? I believe it was your third
Yeah,
response
so that
on
was
second
from
question.
February 2021, specifically looking at data from 2011 to 2018.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, going on to your, talking about there's no like harm on our unions to reducing income inequality. Would you not say that unions specifically increasing wages and right to work decreasing unions is not a direct net harm to that?
Time.
Do you want me to answer? Okay.
We will take some prep time, please.
Okay. It is going, starting at roughly 2 minutes. There's 130 used, 130 remaining.
Stop it, please.
Sure. Call it about 115, 112-ish.
All right.
Brief roadmap. I'm gonna go over the concept of the flow, and then to the pro side, and then some voters at the end. And Wayne. All right. Everyone ready? Okay. Let's start off with the framework of cost-benefit analysis. It is clear that right-to-work laws actually provide you with much more benefits than a non-right-to-work state. Starting off with contention 1 of right-to-work protecting lives. First, they tell you that we don't give you the warrant as to why. This is completely false. Hathaway 17 specifically tells us that right to work laws are proven to boost workers' well-being, both economic and emotional. At that point, they don't need the field to strike because right to work gives them better opportunities and better economic output. Second, they tell you all right to work public nurses are public sector employees. Realize that majority of nurses aren't. When we see that private sector is made up also by nurses, their point does not stand. Moreover, they completely fail to attack our impact of strikes threatens lives when we see that 138 individuals are dying and $46 million are being lost and smaller community hospitals are shutting down, never reopening again. That's where you can vote for us. Now, going on to contention 2 of economic outcomes better in right-to-work states. First, they tell you unions advocate for wages and that we don't give a warrant as to why wages increase. This is completely untrue. Shirkin 11 specifically tells us that the additional business investment a right-to-work law attracts is what raises the demand for labor, which in turn increases wages. When we see there's an increase in competition, we see an increase in wages. That's where we provide you with the link. Moreover, they tell you there's slower economic growth and worse outcomes. Realize that we posted with Delhi 23 when we see that there's an 8% higher employment growth, 10% higher growth in manufacturing, and higher disposable income. Once cost of living is factored in, on net, we always outweigh. Moreover, going on to our impact of economic growth. First, they tell you it's not specific and right to work isn't the reason for innovation. Realize that that's completely untrue. UN 22 specifically looks at right to work and isolates that right to work is the significant and positive effect on corporate innovation. We see this specifically because it encourages corporate innovation in terms of patent grant and citation counts. Moreover, they tell you innovation happens everywhere, but they can't quantify this to you, so do not weigh that in today's mark. Going back into their case, first against income inequality, when we put the Kogan card that tells that right to work does not exacerbate income inequality, they tell you unions help fight income inequality. However, they never provide you a stat on how much unions have actually done this effectively. At that point, they give you nothing to work off on. Then they proceed to drop the rest of the responses laid out by my partner, specifically the alt cost of economic loopholes. Realize that that's the problem with economic inequality, not right to work. Moreover, when we show you through Lucy 15 that Black unemployment rate and Latino unemployment rates are lower in right to work setting, we actually benefit minorities better. Moreover, looking through Block 18, we see that workers are more satisfied within a right to work setting. That's where you can vote for us. Moreover, looking into CEO pay, when we see through Flick 18 that companies are actually investing back into the workers, that's where you can vote for us. This goes completely untouched. Moreover, they cannot quantify how much of that $200 billion is actually attributed to right to work. Moreover, going on to workers' health. First, through Rank 18, we see that 7% increase in healthcare coverage in a right-to-work state. Shirk 11 tells us that this makes them more competitive, and that's why we see it. Moreover, pull through 401ks, and that we see that state policies were the result of COVID-19, not right-to-work laws. You can vote for us for better and innovation every single time.
Prep for the pro is going.
Yes. Yep. Thank you.
1:30 left. One minute left.
That'll be enough for us.
Okay. Just a hair over 45 seconds remaining.
Okay. And with that is first, and I'll clock them up, go over my opponent's case, summarize my partner's head, and then move on to mine. And with that, I will begin. All right, starting on the first case of protecting lives, entities versus healthcare. First of all, we can clearly see that nurses are mostly public sector. According to Worcester in 2019, as of 2019, there are more than 6,000 hospitals in the United States. The mass majority of these are large public facilities like community-owned hospitals rather than smaller for-profit private facilities. So when we can see that a lot of these are right to work, when I talk about strikes and increasing strikes, we have no idea how many of these are actually public sector versus private sector. So we're not going to be able to weigh that in this round in terms of we're not going to know if the actual benefits are coming directly because of right to work or if they're not. So that's going to fall through. You also need to understand that unions are key in benefiting for the private sector workers, as we can see in Adam Hertz, for example. In a letter to OSHA, the American Nurse Association urged OSHA to vigorously enforce the emergency protection standards, moving forward to adopt a permanent standard injection protection. So these private sectors unions are incredibly critical to helping protect these nurses with these strikes, helping get them better pay, better time off, perhaps. Many different myriad factors are going to be going into that, so you're not going to be able to weigh their card or their argument in this round. On their second contention about economic growth. Again, they're talking about wages increasing. They say a generalized argument that these wages are increasing because corporations are combating or like being competitive with each other. We don't know which states these are in. We don't know exactly where they're happening. It's going to be an analytical argument. Whereas we give you the specific reason that wages are increasing because unions are bargaining for them in a myriad of union states specifically. We can see that is exactly why wages are increasing. So you're going to be buying our warrant over that. Again, I'm talking about this attracting businesses and economic growth. We have no idea where this economic growth is going to on their case, so you're going to be flowing through. On our case, this economic growth is going to the corporations. Again, we can see that 940% increase in corporations. So all this economic growth, when they're paying their workers less, is going to the corporations, and that's exactly why we need unions to help benefit for these workers. And finally, we see that innovation is everywhere, but even if you are going to buy their innovation card about the increase in sales growth, you can see that money, we don't know where it's going to, and so most likely with that 940% is going to be going to the corporations and the CEOs. So onto our case, they say right to work has no evidence. On our first connection to subpoint A, they say right to work has no evidence with that it's growing income inequality. Again, that's not what we're arguing. We're arguing that the decrease in unionization in right to work states is what stops, what increases the amount of inequality growing because unions are not there to protect the workers. That's why corporations are able to pay their workers less, and that's why they're moving to these right to work states, is because of that reason. Secondly, on our second contention, we can see that when they say there's no numbers here, we can see that unions are key to increasing the wealth, increasing the wages for these workers, and that's exactly why we can see this inequality is being protected by unions. Under our subpoint C about right to work and it decreases union membership, they say it's only comparing 5 states. Again, these are the 5 most recent states. This is exactly what's happening in the status quo, is we can see that decrease in unionization in right to work states. Subpoint D, working class harmed by corporations. They said and along with that, comparing that to the $200 billion, they say they don't know how much of this is being stolen from workers and it's across the board. Again, understand that this is being stolen, and the card specifically says this is being stolen due to right to work laws. So this $200 billion is being lost because of right to work laws. That's what the card specifically says. So we're pulling that onto our side. Onto the health insurance, we can clearly see that unions provide workers the ability to get far higher percentage of ability to get this health care available to them. We can also see that 2 million workers would lose this health care, and they say when it's involved in other states, that's completely wrong. It's not right here. That's what we're arguing. What we're arguing is that it increases the protection. So for that, those are the ones as well.
Everyone ready? Okay, now everyone ready. Okay, so let's start off with that $200 billion, right? Can you read me the specific quote in your card that says right to work is the reason for that $200 billion being
Yes.
lost?
So it says research shows that this deunionization, and further on the card, if you want to see that for Crossfire, it specifically says that right to work is the key part of this deunionization for the growth of income inequality. Does that make sense?
Alright, I would like to see that card.
Yes, I can show you that. All right, so talking about this idea of our connection to subpoint, let's see here, subpoint B, you say that the state politics is not going to be right to work laws. Our study specifically talks about how it has to do with protective equipment, for example, and paid leave. How are you contrasting that? I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah,
there.
so overall, when we see that these unions allowed for 9,000 residents to be readmitted into the nursing home, even though they still were showing COVID-19 symptoms or still had it, that, and New York is a non-right to work state, meaning that they have extremely strong unions.
Can I just follow up to that? You're saying
Want
that
me
that's
to
the...
finish?
Oh, you can finish it all if you want to, yeah.
Yeah, so when the union didn't stop that, realized that the union is ineffective, and it's because of those state policies.
Again, so you're saying that unions are the ones that force these people to go in, or the unions didn't stop?
Unions didn't stop the problem. It's because of the state policies that we saw that most right-to-work states tend to lean more towards Republican views, and most non-right-to-work states tend to lean more Democratic.
Can we have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, sure.
So how, is that a fault of the unions or is that the fault of the states?
So we're not saying that it's a fault of really anyone. We're just showing that there's an alternative cause as to why we saw more deaths or more preventable deaths within the nursing home industries, and it's because of those state economic policies. It's simply an all cause.
But wasn't the union, the nurse unions the ones that advocated for increased regulations that although failed, they still advocated? Isn't that a net benefit
Yep,
for these
so
unions?
that means a couple things. First of all, the union's not really doing its job, because if they can't even stop people who are still showing symptoms or like had COVID at the time from readmitting into these nursing homes, they're not doing their jobs right. Because you can easily justify not putting somebody who has COVID-19 into an entire building full of people who are at risk if they were to contract it.
Again, is that the fault of the union or the states?
Again, it's an alternative cause.
Okay,
We tell you
you
it's
can have the next question then.
the state policies.
All right, so going off again to that 200 billion number, how much of that is directly as a result of right to work laws? Because that 200 billion is just talking about union erosion in general.
Yeah, so specifically the card says the largest key in that is right to work. So we can't say all of it, but 200 billion is a very large number, and so we can see that since right to work is the largest thing that they say for this unionization, that is why you're gonna be able to weigh that to our side.
Okay.
Yes. I don't have any questions if you wanna ask a question.
Yeah, so let's talk about economic growth, right? So Indiana and Michigan, which passed right to work laws in 2012, they've seen accelerated economic growth. So how exactly are we seeing lower growth when they're actively increasing their economic output?
So you specifically cherry-picked 2 specific states in this instance to try to make it seem as though the statistics are different, but nationwide it's different.
Okay, and we'd like to see
Yep,
the
that
specific,
Cheryl chart.
the specific right to work bit.
Yep. I will grab that.
I will start the cons prep when they have the card.
Sounds good.
Well, you guys can see the card listing. I'm trying to find the actual thing.
But we specifically want to see the right to work bit.
You guys can read this one, so you can see. It's specifically talking about the unionization. of
Unionization
right to work. Yeah.
We want to see the Cheryl's card though, the one about $200 billion.
Yeah, it's this
yes,
one right
right,
here.
yeah.
Talking about the unionization. of Right to work.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
the first link is the one above it that links right to work unionization.
We'll stop prep there with 8 seconds used. And then as soon as I sit down, I'll start it up again.
Yeah, for sure. I have a minute left there. Seconds remain. Five. End of prep.
I'll just be going over voters today. Okay. Everybody ready? Perfect. Okay, let's get started. Framework today, cost benefit analysis. Whoever provides the more harms or benefits is going to be winning today's round. Let's jump into our first main voter, which is the right to work creates more economic benefits. Look to Flicken 18. When we look at CEOs and more large corporations, we see that they're actually paying their workers more money and using that to invest in their wages. When we see a 3.8% innovation, which is directly a result of these right to work laws, we see more GOP being generated within the United States, affecting not only union members, but also the entirety, showing more magnitude. But when Deli in 23 explains that we see an 8% more employment, realize that we're always outweighing. When they drop Lucy in 15, which tells us that minority workers have better job opportunities within these right to work states, and we already see an increase in pay within these right to work states, we're always outweighing. Moreover, when $46 million are being lost from hospitals directly because of these right to work laws that induce these strikes, realize that we're always showing more benefits that go along with this. But moreover, when we look at their $200 billion, realize that the card that they tell us does not say right to work at all in the quote and card that they provided for us. It's not right to work specific at all. Moreover, when they drop block in 18, which shows that unions within right to work states are actually more satisfied than their non-union counterparts. So let's jump into our second main voter today, which is right to work is benefiting the worker. First of all, they never actually show you how many nurses are part of this public sector industry. But when we show you that these nurses are 88% more likely to strike when they're a member of the union, realize that that results in 138 deaths per strike and a 19.4% increase in mortality, and nothing can justify that. Especially when we see that there's already 7% more coverage within these right-to-work states, which they never refute. Moreover, when we see 6.7% increase in wages, or $11,000 per family, we overall show that we always not only win the economic battle, but also benefiting the Americans. When we show you that Shirk 11, that the reason why we see this increase in wages and overall better living standards is because companies have to compete with each other to attract the labor. They completely drop that all throughout the round. Moreover, when we're looking at the harms versus the benefits, Con consistently shows you the right to works create more benefits.
I'll use prep time.
Okay, 45 seconds, go. Thirty seconds remain.
Yeah, that'll be enough for me.
Okay.
Okay. Off the clock roadmap, I'm going to be going over some things in the round, and then I'll go on to voters after that. With that, are my opponents ready?
Yep.
Judges ready? And with that, I will begin. So my opponents come up here and tell you that our card specifically doesn't say right to work, but our card specifically says deunionization. And in our subpoint C, we specifically tell you that right to work is deunionization. So, and since they haven't refuted that, it still stands as a connection between that $200 billion that's being deunionized to our subpoint C, which shows that right to work is deunionization within these states. So you will be buying that $200 billion because it still stands, because we still have that link in subpoint C. Now let's go on to my main voter of voters. We have number 1, income inequality, number 2, lives, number 3, union benefits. On number 1, we specifically show you that $200 billion is being lost because of direct unionization that is being caused by right to work. Even if you do count further wage increases, which specifically we already said in our contention 1 that goes majority to the compensation of CEOs and corporations, 940% that my opponents still have not attacked, you will be realizing that this $200 billion outweighs any single debt. Number 2, lives. We specifically show you that their contention 1 that protecting lives is specifically, again, as we mentioned in our summary, that majority are public sector and already have right to work. Right to work doesn't solve this because, they just give you examples of Abiah and Sanford to make it seem as though it's a local type of example, but that's just 2 examples out of the majority of the nationwide, where we specifically show you that it's a majority towards public sector, which means their whole first contention does not stand. You will not be weighing that, but instead you will be weighing our impact of 8,000 lives could have been saved with increased unionizations in our subpoints, contention 2 impact subpoints. Now let's go on to the third one, which is union benefits. Specifically, look to our wages, our card that we specifically gave you with the Bruno 2021 card, where we give you the $1,500 increase. Not only that, but it shows you that there's decrease in GDP, decrease in economic growth, slower economic growth within these right-to-work states. And because of that, and that it uses that U.S. federal statistics to evaluate that, you will be buying that specific card in this round because we give you the most credible source and also the warrants onto why it's happening, while my opponents still have not done that, specifically just saying that it's more competition where they haven't actually given us any examples of that happening. And because of these reasons, you will be voting on the pro side today. I thank you for your time.